afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the finals of Grand Prix Jerusalem. Today, we'll see the second and possibly the last game, so the second classical game, and very likely the last game of the event, last game of the entire Grand Prix series. With Jan Nepomniachtchi leading the match and having the white pieces, it means mission impossible for Wei to get a shot at leveling the score. The game has started as far as I can see. Yeah, so we are starting a little bit late. I was really wondering what will be the strategy for Wei in this case. Obviously, he needs to try to play something original in the opening. That we've said a lot about that. He has to avoid the main lines. He has to avoid early simplifications. Well, his opponent, Jan Nepomniachtchi, is not known for playing overly solid chess, but at the same time, yeah, if you give him a chance to go for some well-known opening line where the equal position, or at that level, almost a draw is the outcome, well, he would have gone for it, because guess what? It's a lot at stake for Jan Nepomniachtchi. To remind you, if he wins this final, he will take a second place in the Grand Prix. He still cannot catch up with Alexander Kryschuk, but second place seems to be as good as the first one. 2 qualification spots for the candidates tournaments are on, or were on the line in this Grand Prix. So first game, once again, welcome guys in your YouTube chat of World Chess. I can see already some questions are coming there. First game finished with Nepomniachtchi's victory. That was an interesting game, I have to say. At some point, Wei getting a serious, substantial advantage, I must say, right from the opening. But then something has happened, and he really misplayed it. Later on, around move 30, that was a big surprise, where it would seem it was already black fighting for the advantage, and Wei had a chance to repeat the moves and therefore claim a draw, and he decided not to. So one of those cases where being aggressive, being brave didn't pay off. Right, so well, few opening moves already been played, and we'll switch to the analysis board view in a minute, but before that, yeah, once again a reminder of the players' road to the final. Wei won all of his matches on the tiebreak, so there was a victory over Anish Giri, then an epic match against Sergei Karyakin, and eventually he beat David Navarro in the semi-final all on the tiebreak. Not a single classical game has finished decisively in case of Wei. For Jan Nepomniachtchi, he had a couple of tiebreaks. He has won against Boris Gelfand. That was perhaps the most problematic match for Jan Nepomniachtchi. Then won against Wesley So in round 2, and the kind of final in the semi-final was very important match between his direct rival for the spot in the candidates, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and that was the match Jan Nepomniachtchi has won in classical chess after winning game 1 with the white pieces. So in the final, he so far is getting even a better scenario, winning the first game with black. But let's see, because it's a lot of nerves involved, a lot of tension, and who knows, maybe Wei is going to have a chance to come back. Right, and before we switch to the analysis board view, once again, let me thank the companies who supported World Chess and the Grand Prix series, who made the event possible. So thanks to Fossagro, strategic partner of World Chess and Grand Prix series, Algorand, the blockchain partner, Kaspersky, cybersecurity partner, as well as Ustek, the partner of the event in Jerusalem. Right, and once again, welcome guys in the YouTube chat on the World Chess channel. And since it's me alone for the time being and only one game going, I believe that's a perfect time to ask questions. If you have some suggestions for moves, I welcome, and we can discuss things basically. Right. The game has started with one e4. That's kind of Nepo's go-to move, unless he has a specific bit of a preparation. So, for instance, against Maxime Vyshkhelograd, that's the recent example, right? Against MVL, Jan Nepomniachtchi has started with d4, so that was the Grunfeld. I wanted to say French defense for some reason. It was the Grunfeld, right? But there was a special occasion. But typically, Jan opens with one e4, and then, as far as I remember, for Wei, e5 and c5 would be the main moves, kind of his repetition moves. The problem with that, however, wait a second, and he was playing c6 against Karyakin. Yeah, let's not forget. He was playing the Caro-Kann as well. Right, but as I said, being in this situation, under the circumstances, c5 and go for the Najdov, as exciting as it sounds on paper, you know, or it looks on paper, it sounds, I mean, in a vacuum. It's not such a brilliant choice if you really, really need to win at any cost, because Jan Nepomniachtchi is a specialist in the Najdov himself, and the Najdov variation, in fact, allows a lot of, well, there is a lot of systems against the Najdov which basically shut down the game to like playing for two results only. Might not, like white might not be getting a lot of winning chances, but to get a very safe position is not that hard. And let's not forget, against the Najdov you have this thingy, for instance, bishop b5 check is terribly annoying if you have to play for a win with black. So I was playing, and obviously there are, say, there are such unpleasant news, more or less, doesn't matter which first move you're playing. Against the Caro-Kann, I'm guessing the exchange line, the Bobby Fischer line, is not something that you'd be happy to see. There is also the Panov attack, where black has difficulties getting you know, like a realistic winning chance. Against e5, I'm not even sure what's the most solid. Yeah, I know. Well, the problem with e5 for Wei that he's a Petrov player, right? So you don't play the Petrov for a win. Yeah, e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6 is his repetio opening. But then again, I mean, anything but the Petrov. So g6 and so-called modern defense, which is basically the Pirt's defense with knight being kept on g8, is a legit way, at least to avoid the immediate long theoretical lines, right? At least to avoid, I mean, it's far less explored than the main lines. But at the same time, kind of giving away the center, letting white to develop freely, is not necessarily a good thing. d6. Interestingly, knight f3 and not f4. That's, once again, if we talk about how do you play those games where you're happy with a draw and your opponent has to win with black. There are actually two ways. So the most principal one, and I believe in this position, the most principal move is f2, f4, of course. f2, f4, three pawns attack, and then knight f3. And I believe... I mean, some people still do play the so-called modern way, right, modern defense. But I believe the better move would be to switch to the actual Pirc, so go knight f6. And then once again, if you want, you of course can find some systems with white where you're rock solid. Jan chose to go with knight f3, which is a very well-known, very solid positional system. The a6 goes bishop e2, so just calm development and, you know, not trying to do anything crazy. So the second way, so first way to play with white if your opponent is in a must-win situation is actually trying to punish him for not playing the best openings, right? Because guess what? Giving away the center voluntarily, going for g6, d6, yes, it avoids the main theoretical lines, but it's not such a good opening. right? The first way is to kind of try to punish. The second way, and that's the approach Jan Nepomniachtchi has taken, is do reasonable stuff and try to keep the position solid. Well, simplify as soon as opportunity presents itself. And then e7, e6, castles. Knight to e7, rook e1, knight to d7. And that's, as far as I know, it's, it has a name of hippopotamus for whatever reason. I don't find it any kind of resembling the hippo itself. And in Russian classification, it's called the Uytelki defense. So, well, by the name of a player who was playing that, well, it's an attempt for a very, very flexible setup from black. So if white is not challenging black's setup and just does some reasonable things, like h3, I don't know, why would you play h3? I mean, just throwing in some moves for white, then basically this is something black wants to achieve. It's a very flexible pawn chain, both bishop fan-chatted, knights behind the pawn's phalanx, right? Knights on d7, e7. And then black is looking for an opportunity to push c5, or sometimes, interestingly enough, even f7, f5 is a legit way of playing this. And now that I'm looking at this position, even here, castle short might be a bit premature, because queen d2, and it will be really hard to stop bishop h6. So very often they do this. They go h6, then queen d2 prevents them from castling short. And like in the blitz, we've seen people doing king f8, g8, h7, then moving the rook. So it's not very easy for white to like really refute black's setup. But getting a good, solid position shouldn't be a problem. Hippo is a river horse. Yeah. Highest stakes ever for Nepo, as our moderator puts it. All right, after knight d7, white decided to actually take care of potential b7, b5 by going a2, a4. And black's reaction is, more or less automatic. You have to play b6. You don't want your queen side to be squeezed by a4, a5, because now it's really problematic to move one of the pawns on the queen side, because, yeah, guess what, b5, white simply captures and then kind of ruins your pawn structure a little. If you move the c pawn once again, for white, having the pawn on a5 helps immensely. So you gotta keep the flexibility of the structure this way. You go b6, if white ever tries a5, obviously b5 is what black is planning for. So what white needs here is an actual plan of what he wants to do. Because, yes, white is getting an easy hand developing, right? Basically, no white's actions are challenged for the time being. You can do more or less whatever you like. The thing, however, is it's really hard to establish what the pawn structure in the center is going to look like. Like, for instance, d5 and e5 are two moves you'd be looking at, right? That's what I'm guessing. But after d5, as far as I understand, black's intention is to play e5 to close the center this way, then try to look for f7, f5, or right moment to play f7, f5. So it's more of a King's Indian style. So you can't really crack black's position open very easily. After e5, black hardly plays d5 because it doesn't go together well with the bishop on g7. I'm guessing in case of e5, black actually tries to keep the center flexible, so goes bishop b7, then some knight f5 potential, will castle short, very likely. Sometimes goes h6, g5, puts the knight on g6, that's another version. So white really, really needs to find a way to open up the position. Bishop e3, and yeah, That's, I know, wait, hang on a second, a4 was played, right? So after knight d7, a4 was played first, a4, a6, a4, b6, bishop e3, because I was playing h2, h3 first, and I wasn't that clever, because since black doesn't have the knight on f6, you don't really need the prophylactical h3 move, so you play bishop e3 immediately, bishop to b7, queen d2, once again, oops, no, that's a wrong arrow. Once again, was the idea to go bishop h6 and to try to swap the dark square bishops, which is especially unpleasant if black castles short, because now bishop h6, and you can't really keep the bishop. You're not advised to take on h6. That'd be terrible. So queen h6 and knight g5 is coming. So that's really, really annoying. Well, typically, if white goes to h6, you never ever take. It might be still a playable position, but in order for this to be playable, not to get like terribly worse position, black has to play e5 at some point. And I mean, I was playing this position. I mean, not precisely that way, but kind of black setup. And what I remember that at some point you have to go e5. And that's okay if you're kind of involved in a normal game where a draw for black starting from the opening is actually a good result. Because in this case, you capture with the knight, capture with the pawn, you're fine trading the queens. Knight on e7 is not that great, but later on might be moved to c6 and d4. Right, and all that would be lovely for black, because, well, perhaps around this point he already can claim that he has equalized. But, you know, his chances of playing for a win in this case practically non-existent. Because white gets all the chances to simplify, right? And once again, we've seen players misplaying even the simple symmetrical position, but not that kind of players. So those guys involved in a final of the Grand Prix, they know how to make a draw when they need it, really. Therefore, after queen d2, h7, h6 was played, and that postpones the castle for a serious amount of time. You won't be able to castle anytime soon. Jan has played h2, h3, so now he kind of decides this move is needed. Point being, perhaps, in case of, like, I'm not even sure what move you want to play. So you go rook d1, once again trying to bring the rooks in the center. Black would have this, knight f6, which, as oddly as it sounds, happens to be a sort of a double attack. So black targets the e4 pawn, and he's threatening knight g4. So the moment you guard the e4 pawn with bishop d3, and that's normally is the way you want to protect the pawn on e4. Now black goes knight g4 and guarantees himself exchange of these dark square bishop. Or, well, maybe you go bishop f4, maybe it's still playable. Yeah, but if white has a chance to avoid it, why not to avoid it? h2, h3 was played. So now in case of knight f6, white will play bishop e2 to d3. Black's problem, as I said, the main problem for black is that he can't really castle short. But interestingly, when he has no intentions of castling short, he goes g5, and this is very, very aggressive. g5, put the knight on g6, maybe later on, you know, even going for 7 f5. Or it might be f5 at once. And yeah, guess what? You have to take risks. Being in such a situation, you have to take risks. What I'm afraid of for black is that white's going to play d5 right now, because the typical reaction with e6, e5, which I was advocating previously, doesn't look all that attractive in this case, because white's going to have a very typical maneuver. Knight goes to h2, later on to f1, later on to g3. And then we'll take, you know, under control all the light squares, and it will be really, really problematic for black to play f7, f5. And without f5, guess what? This King's Indian thing doesn't really work well for black. We'll see. D5 is a very principled move. Not sure if the really good one. And point being, you kind of have to react to F5. What you can try to do is to play knight G6. Oh well, that's an interesting thing. Maybe we can take a look at this one. Point being, you try to take control over some dark squares. And my initial intention was to say that after knight d4, black is in trouble. Indeed, you don't want to play e5 because knight f5, that will be, well, the knight on f5 will be devastatingly powerful. So that's something to avoid. Queen e7 might be the move, but then once again, then you're running into various tactical issues. Bishop to h5, pinning this guy, and then at some point even a move like knight d5 might materialize. Because if you notice the opposition of white's rook on e1, black's queen on e7, black not being castled, that might be very, very dangerous. And look, d5 is played. So the argument is in favor of going knight g6, that after knight d4, I'm not sure if knight d4 is the best move, it could be something else yet, but if white goes knight d4 immediately, black actually has a somewhat counterintuitive capture on d4. So yes, you surrender the powerful King's Indian bishop, or whatever you call it, the dragon bishop. But the objective for you is to block the center after this. And then you're getting rid of a really stupid piece, which would have been, which you would have on g7. Then arranging your pawns on the dark squares, and possibly, maybe, you'll get a chance at King's Indian at the attack on the king's side. I mean, in spirit of the King's Indian. Even though, of course, having the bishop on b7 instead of c8, having the king in the center doesn't really help you. But yeah, I mean, some knight f4, queen f6, these kind of things, h5, g4. You might be scared of having the king in the center, or never mind castling long. Castling long looks terrible, but well, considering the match situation, maybe it's too late already to be afraid of something. So if anything, I'm actually considering knight g6. Yeah, so after knight g6 takes on e6 first, and then bishop c4 is what the YouTube chat recommends. Sounds fun, yeah. Once again, maybe that's a moment where black can't really keep his stuff together. Yeah, it's black is very close to, like for instance, after knight d4 as well, yeah? It pretty much leads to the same line. If you go queen e7, you run into bishop h5. Could it be that black still can take this one? I don't think it has to be a good position, though. That's what I was thinking. Like, you take on d4, and you put this knight to e5. So you're trying to prove the knight on e5 is nicely placed, which is true. After bishop h5, you still have castle short. It's like, looks like everything's pinned, right? So everything's hanging, but you do have castle short. And it's not necessarily terrible, because this doesn't actually work for white, yeah? Some sort of e5 maybe, like kind of trying to break in the center. No, I don't like bishop h5. Yeah, so d5 is the principal move, but at the same time, it might lead to, to some excitement, some complications. Once again, what black doesn't want to do is to play e5. I don't think it's recommended. It's like basically shutting down the bishop on g7, as well as bishop on b7. So I'm guessing knight g6 is more or less the only move. And this could be playable as well. This could be playable, but yeah, then you have to think of your reaction after knight d4 once again. Castles or ed5 can be considered. That's what chat is thinking. Castles, oh, well, you're right, guys. Unless you lose e6 or will be uncomfortable defending e6 immediately, castle might actually work. So despite black's attempts to get activity on the king side, I don't really think his own king belongs to the long castle. So it's very likely that black will steal castle short, and especially if, well, yeah, if, say, the f-file is getting open. Then yeah, the rook kind of works. Yeah, black can bring the queen over there if nothing else. Or once again, knight g6 and so on. So, interestingly, in the long run, but if black is given like a few tempi, his position might be really, really attractive. So white will be in a hurry to organize some pressure immediately in this case. So castle short makes sense. It's just I was wondering if this is not terribly dangerous. But you know, at the same time, if it's a last game, you just take on f3. That's what you do. That's what you do. And then, yeah, bishop e6 intermediate actually runs into rook f7, right? So you, as white, you have to capture over here. Black goes knight e5. And at least you're able to create a mess. I do understand that very likely it doesn't work objectively for black, but you know, just about, yeah, actually king g2 I don't like all that much, because now knight h4 is coming, queen f6 is coming. That's the way black needs this game to go. Well, Wei is still thinking after d5, yeah, of course, that's a very, very important choice. Castle, doesn't it lose to bishop c4? Let's see. You mean bishop c4 immediately? No, d6, f6, bishop c4, that's what we've seen, yeah? So ed5, ed5, and castle short was the other version of our chat. In this case, however, the bishop on b7 kind of doesn't feel very well. Wei decides for the move that I've called suspicious, and there was an immediate e5. And even though it was played by the finalists of the Grand Prix, I don't like the move, and I don't think it was good. Yeah, e5, an immediate response by Jan. Yes, knight h2. He knows all the themes in this position. Yeah, you need your knight to g3, so it fights for f5 and h5. And honestly, I don't know what black has to do here. After knight f6, there is another route for this knight. I mean, there is nothing wrong in going knight f1, knight g3, but you might as well do this. You might go to g6. Yeah, and a fair point. Yeah, thanks, Lorinda, for kind of backing me up. So the engine is... it'll be helpful not to blunder. I mean, if you guys at home watching it with the engine and kind of laughing at the lines I'm providing, because, well, most of them will be wrong, I mean, if tested with the computer, I understand. But at the same time, the engines are not very helpful in Keynesian structures. And if you think of the practical games, right, then... Once again, the engine would suggest the moves for black which are aimed to slowly and painfully try to equalize in this position. And that's not what Wei is going for, because otherwise he would have played the different move one. So once again, I mean, now that if you're checking with the engine, it kind of is misleading. Because it'll show you, first of all, it will probably show you that white is much better. That's typically what engine has to say in those Keynesian structures, with white having more space. Well, as soon as white plays d5 and your computer is out of book, right, out of the theoretical database, it starts screaming at, saying white is much better, which not necessarily is true. Yes, so knight goes to h2. I believe knight g6 was played, so black is aiming to put the knight on f4. Yeah, and once again, the objective for black here is to put the knight on f4. I'll say white goes knight f1, black puts the knight on f4. And kind of never leave from f4. That's more or less the objective for black. That's it. It's kind of white somehow organizes g3, right? Not right now because h3 pawn's hanging, but say white goes there. You go to f6, bishop goes to f5. I don't know what you do, but the point being that the moment white plays g3, you don't react. Because if your knight is pushed backward, that means you've lost the strategic fight. White is much better and very solid at the same time. So instead, you try to sacrifice it in the right way and trying to open some files, get some sort of a kingside attack going. Honestly, after knight f1, knight g3, knight f4. I don't like the consequences of knight g3, and they said knight's appearance on f5 would typically mean that black's position is horrible, and therefore maybe black should try to play it in a more precise way over here, like say going knight f6, and after knight g3 going knight h4, trying to control both f5 and h5. And then opt for bishop c8 later on. But still, black is sort of getting stuck here, while one of the ways to play this one for white is just to go a5 after b5. White does have one kind of inferior piece, the minor piece, the knight on c3 is not doing all that much. So relocating this knight should typically help. Knight to a2. And it's interesting how in this line you actually want to use not very usual squares to reroute your knights to a better square, to a better outposts, right? So knight from f3 went to h2, f1, and g3, and now this knight from c3 goes to a2 in order to be put to b4 and later on c6. Black needs to win. Is this a way to push for a win? Well, that's what he's trying to do, right? Oh, actually, a couple of moves more were played. So after knight g6, Jan has played bishop g4, and response to that was knight f6. So now the question is, what's the plan for Nepomniachtchi? Is he going? Will he keep the bishop on g4? I mean, that's the question. Because like letting black take, it's not necessarily such a great idea. He might as well, like playing knight f1 nevertheless, right? But then black captures. Still problematic to play h5 though. So I was thinking of something like that, but once again, white is sort of one move away from achieving the absolute stability with knight g3 and then later on heading towards those two squares. The bishop on g7 is terribly passive and perhaps won't really find an active role in this game till the very end. And h5, I mean, one thing that white's going to take on g5, right? That's one thing. And it might actually be a mistake to take on g5, as surprising as it sounds, because in this case, black plays bishop f6. You trade here, you do win the pawn, but black all of a sudden is getting some, some files open and some attack going. So after h5, I suspect what you do is you take on h5 and you try to block the entire thing by going g4. After rook h3, you still have your queen g2 to the rescue, attacking the rook and basically pushing it away. So you're not interested in capturing the g5 pawn. You push the rook away, then now h7. You put the knight on g3 and then try to land it on f5. Yeah, knight f1 is played. Hang on a second. Yeah, knight f1's on the board. So I'm guessing you don't really want to take on g4, but instead you do this, right? Then after knight, okay. If you do this, if you put the bishop, if you put the knight on f4, white might actually change his mind and put the bishop on f5. So the reason white didn't play bishop f5 immediately was knight h4, and then the bishop is targeted, and you have to, well, perhaps have to move it for one more time. But knight f1 first, giving black the possibility to, or rather giving black an opportunity to decide on where he wants this game to go. And then if the knight is put on f4, which is undeniably an active square, and you want your knight to be on f4, well, the real problem is that you've committed to g6, g5 too early, right? Interestingly enough, I mean, if you track back a little bit, like here, that would be a decent position for black to play. That'd be just a normal King's Indian with the pawn on g6. But the moment black went g5, then the kind of weakening the entire well, light squares in the, I mean, all the light squares in his camp, more or less. Like it's left to play a6, a5. That's just like surrendering all the light squares in the position. So it's really tough, and it's especially this f5, because if white ever lands the knight on f5, that basically is going to be the end of it. Not the end of the game, but the end of where he's challenged, because it's practically impossible to play for win with white having the knight on f5. All right, so the real question now becomes if black can organize any sort of an attack, right? So one more time, the try was this: go to c8, provoke white to play f3, and then go h5, hoping for white to capture on g5, after which you actually do have a decent amount of counterplay. That's a very typical pawn sacrifice for the King's Indian, right? And now you have your knight going to f4. You actually have the square for the king. Now you'll put the king on e7, put the bishop on d7, bring the other rook to g8. That's a Trafford way of, playing those positions. Knight g4 is the best, according to Anonymous, but as I said, well, perhaps I have to make an exception for Anonymous, who possesses the best engine, it seems, the deepest engine from the entire chat, but still the engine evaluation or the engine move suggestions, it very often will be misleading in the King's Indian structures. Yeah, I know it's a very bold statement nowadays where engines are rated like 500 elo points higher than the world champion, but still, it's like, because the thing is, the engine's going to try to equalize the position for black, which is a no-go for we. What's the positional disaster, people asking? Wait until you see the knight on f5. It is a positional disaster. I mean, if you compare it with the position with pawn on g6, kind of does seem to be a positional disaster. Yeah, compared to the King's Indian, it's kind of the king side, the right part of the board, right? All the king side is very much King's Indian-like, if you think. However, on the queen side, both sides have a little bit of a twist, so to speak, because in the King's Indian, white would have had the pawn on c4, and therefore it's like white's plan would have been go b4, go c5, very quickly open the queen side, create initiative there. Now with this knight on c3 being there, it's a little bit awkward. White can't really open files on the queen side that fast. So his main objective, therefore, is to first kind of trying to stop black's initiative by achieving knight f5, basically. That's. I know I'm talking about a lot about this f5 square, but it actually is crucial in the very, I mean, more or less in every king's Indian position. I mean, when black commits to g5, it's one of the memorable positional games I've played. I had my opponent playing e5 and g5 early in the king's Indian, and it's kind of, the guy got really squeezed. I mean, it's not very often I'm bragging about my own games, so that was really nice one. And to add to this, yeah, so the twist for white compared to king's India, that he actually is not getting the queenside attack, queenside initiative going. For black, the bishop on b7 is terrible. Typically, what's good about the king's Indian that computer doesn't understand, so when you get the basic position of the king's Indian with white shutting down the center with d5, they say the bishop from c8 doesn't need to be developed because it already participates in black's attack standing on its place. Now, that means black has spent a couple of tempi on b6, bishop b7, and misplaced his bishop because he needs this bishop on c8 anyway. So f5 versus f4, fair point. So black wants the f4 square, white wants the f5 square. If played carefully, white should be able at some point achieve g2, g3, and actually threaten to capture the knight on f4, which won't leave as a promise. The moment black puts the knight on f4, he'll keep it there forever. So the knight will be sacrificed, but white, with careful play, should be able to create the threat of actually capturing the knight, and that should be problematic for black. Now, I'm not saying that black is without a chance, but from what it looks like, it should be objectively very good for white since black committed to g5. Now people ask about the game I was talking about. I believe it has to be on chess games or something. So it's the game against Rauf Mamedov, Dubai Open 2004, perhaps, something like this. So if you want to check this one out, same structure and more or less, you know, the model game, how you handle those with white. The bishop will reroute to c8. Yes, that's correct. But typically in the king's Indian, it would be the bishop for black already on c8. Yeah, it's like, imagine now black's to move, black goes bishop c8, and white says, no, I don't want to trade, I go back to e2. So that's what you would have in the king's Indian. And even so, it's considered to be playable for white, because one thing you can do with this knight on f4, yeah, it's not like I'm recommending for white to move the bishop. Obviously, in this case, if black ever plays bishop c8 with white bishop being on g4, you trade all day, every day. You trade on c8, and you get knight g3, and once again, you want to put your knight on f5. That's what you try to do. So white has to decide has to solve one little problem, has to decide where the knight from c3 is going. Because it's not doing all that much on c3. It does guard the e4 pawn. But now with the other knight being put on g3, the pawn's protected, and you really, really want to relocate this knight somewhere else. Yeah, so bishop c8 is not ideal for the time being. And if you trade, and once again, if you go back to the line I was talking about, if you trade on g4, go bishop c8, go h5, then I believe white has to capture on h5. Has to capture on h5 and try to play g4 very next move. Let's see. Black comes up with knight f4, and bishop f5 is on the board as well. Yeah, so as I said, yeah, when a black knight leaves from g6 to f4, so knight h4 is no longer a possible move. Then you put the bishop on f5. Black can, yeah, that's a valid point. So black can move the knight. That's what you were thinking, right? So black can move the f6 knight, play f6 to guard the g5 pawn, and only then go h5, h4. But it's very, very long. That's time-consuming, and typically that means that white will be able to do something else during that time. So after knight f4, bishop f5. I suspect some h5 actually makes sense. So I wonder if black has a decent reply to g3 here. The point being, you don't want to go back to g6, even if the g5 pawn wouldn't be hanging. But as I said, you can keep this knight on f4 for considerable amount of time, like going bishop h6. For the time being, white is not threatening to capture for real, right? And possibly with your pawn on h5, you can actually consider going bishop c8. All right, so what could be the alternative for white after h5? Bishop on f5 is kind of nice, but at the same time the knight would have been more efficient, right? Maybe that's the moment where your e4 pawn is protected, and you use this time to relocate your c3 knight, like going a5, to which black almost automatically responds with b5, and then you go there to a2 to b4. But that might be this tiny moment when you lose stability, so that black plays bishop to c8. You'll have to trade, right? Very likely you'll have to trade. Queen c8. Now your e4 pawn's hanging. And this turns into a tricky business, because if you go f3, then black might have a move like g4. If you return your knight to c3, there is b4. You might try knight g3, going to f5, the square I was advertising, but then you have to consider black playing h4, and after knight f5, some real mess starts. Black captures on e4, white has a chance to take on g7 with a check, but then there is no move for this knight to return. After queen b4 might be like a very simple move, knight back to f6, and then capture the knight on g7. So that's the kind of a game we wanted. That's, I'm sure. That's the kind of the game he was opting for. How about short castle here? Yeah, let's see. Let's see. You can castle short, but then it's much harder to organize the real attack here, right? And then once again, white can play g3, and sooner or later he'll start threatening to capture on f4, like continuing with king to h2, f2, f3 to have the retreat for the e3 bishop, and then at some point white's going to be threatening to capture on f4. And the moment you leave is more or less the moment you don't lose the game once again, but you kind of surrender in the positional battle. Because then it's really, really tough to get rid of this bishop on f5. We'll see. Anyway, h5's played. h5's played. g3 here is 1.5, but that's a scary move here, g3. Wei can create a mess. Well, he will try to create a mess even if Nepo is careful. But if he's careless, then there will be a mess. And once again, I'm not sure if it was played by Nepomniachtchi in the most precise fashion. Once again, considering the situation, because he has started like a safe opening, and then he's trying to play the most principled moves, which is good, but at the same time, perhaps not the safest way to play it. So I basically imagined like the odds for the occurrence of the potential result. It could have been like 5% to win for each play, and then 90% the game finishes in a draw. Yeah, and under the circumstances, I'm ready to claim that this is a better scenario for Jan than the one he has now, where perhaps he has like up to 30% to win, or maybe even more, but you know, the possibility of his win and a draw as the result combined goes a little bit lower, and then he gets like 10%, where he gets 10% of winning the game. It's okay. It's really weird to talk, you know, probability and ranges in the game, which seemingly has no RNG involved. But yeah, but sometimes there are such thoughts occur, I mean, especially during those elimination events, so that you think, yeah, how likely I am to misplay this, what looks like a very, very pleasant position. Yeah, so A4, A5, as people claim, is 1.5. And that's, you know, that's correct. At the same time, it gives us no information whatsoever. Because, yes, A5 will be answered with B5. That much I know. And then what's the next move you're making, right? So one move, even like, say, now Jan is getting somehow the computer assistance, and the computer says, go E5. It won't help at all in this moment. Won't help at all because, you know, you actually need a plan, some sort of a plan for white in this particular case. And A5 doesn't sound like a plan, even though knowing that it's kind of a better position, yeah, it's a good thing if you can get approval from the computer that your position is good, but there is no mystery in this particular one. Jan knows he has an advantage, and he knows the position might get sharp, and he knows where he's going to try to play it till the end. Right, and now, well, a couple of questions in the chat. Well, I'd like to answer the funny one, if I played League of Legends. No, not really. Not really. I'm, well, not very much into gaming. Do play Hearthstone from time to time, but that's it. Yeah, and I believe we will have a guest on Skype right now. Let's see how it works. Yeah. Well, the technology being tested a few days ago when Peter Swidler joined. So this time we'll have Anastasia Karlovic, a press officer of Jerusalem Grand Prix from Jerusalem, I suppose.
Yes, exactly. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well. I hope guys guys can hear us as well, the guys who are watching. So what's going on in Jerusalem?
Yes.
What's the weather?
The weather is great as usually. You know, it's plus 18 and sunny weather, so I think everybody is enjoying, the players and everyone who is here now for this Grand Prix event. At the same time, as you can feel, the tension grows and everybody is focused on the game at the moment. We have plenty of spectators today. For some reason, there are many, many people who came to watch the final game, maybe the final game.
Everyone's referring to this one as the final game, and me included. But it seems there is still a possibility that Wei is going to get some fight, and then we don't know what's going to happen. Because imagine how nervous Jan Nepomniachtchi might get at some point. He is. Yeah, he did a lot, like winning against MVL, and then one gets relaxed because that felt like a final in the semi-final. But then, yet again, he has to win the other match. So that's really, really
That's
hard, I
true.
believe.
You know, Zhenya, while there was this interview with MVL and Jan, and they were both talking about this difficult schedule that which they have last year, I was somehow thinking about you, who was following the same schedule. Basically, you were commenting Grand Chess Tour, then you came directly to comment Jerusalem Grand Prix. So how are you doing actually all these days?
Well, barely surviving. Weather is not as good in Moscow as in Jerusalem. Yeah, and if we are talking about my schedule, so my target had a tougher schedule because I barely get any wins in classical chess. So if, let's say, some people, they win a match and they have a free day instead of a tiebreak, well, I'm going with all the tiebreaks.
I know that, and actually, you see that Wei played this tiebreak against Navarre, so he had one free day less compared to Jan Nepomniachtchi, and perhaps it can also influence, let's say, his play, because yesterday he just simply blundered. He said in his interview that this knight b5, when he played it with 2 seconds on his clock, he simply forgot about rook b5. So, which shows a little bit what kind of shape he has at the moment, I believe.
Yeah, I was really shocked, by the way, by his knight b5 move. Not the quality of the move itself, but it was clear that well, he had the advantage after the opening, but at the moment when he played knight b5, the things were not going his way, and he had a chance to repeat the position, right? He could have right down queen g4. It would have been threefold. So he was brave.
Exactly.
He wanted to play for a win, but yeah.
Sometimes you need to make a practical decision, and that's what Jan said in his interview, because I believe probably haven't seen it yet, but the players shared their thoughts after the game, and I mean, it seems that he spent 50 minutes first, thinking about one move, and then he refused to go for repetition. And actually, his opponent, Jan Nepomniachtchi, said that, of course, it was better for his opponent to take draw at this moment, and he believed the positions should be balanced, not better for white or for black. And he was really happy to see this knight b5 on the board. So, okay, I mean, it was a fight yesterday, but somehow these minor things, they show that probably Wei is more tired than Jan. This is what was my feeling yesterday.
Yeah, and some people in the YouTube chat as well were arguing, like, it's really, really hard for Wei to force himself to play this final when he understands the other guy has much more at stake. Right, for Wei, it's basically a game for some amount of money, for the trophy, I understand, but nowhere near as important as it is for Jan Nepomniachtchi.
That's true. Yes, he is fighting only, I think, for the fourth place. Yes, in the final Grand Prix standings. At the same time, still, it's a victory in the tournament. Let's say we can consider it as one of the strongest events in the chess world. So still something to lose today. I believe he actually got the position, as I heard you were talking about it before, that he got the position probably which he would like to get for the game when you really need to strike back and win in order to keep playing in this final.
Yeah, I don't know what's the objective evaluation of this position is, and let me tell you what, I don't care. As much as Wei doesn't care about what the objective evaluation is, as long as he has chances to complicate the game, as long as he has chances for some sort of a kingside attack that he was looking. Yeah, you don't really care if the computer's going to say +2 and Jan has some sneaky way of winning it. It doesn't matter. Well, the worst evaluation for you is like if it's 0-0-0, rook endgame, 3 pawns each. I mean, that's what you want to avoid. And this is not happening for the time being.
Yes, but okay, Jan actually showed even in his match against MVL that in these complicated positions, somehow he still can keep calm and, let's say, manage to hold it. Remember this game against MVL where he got his chances, but simply was so tired that couldn't really find the best way. So we'll see. I mean, so far I think he played really, really well, except this first match against Boris Gelfand. It was a funny accident during the interview. Wesley so said that, okay, Jan is playing really well in this tournament, especially considering also his first match against Boris Gelfand. And Jan turned to him and said, "It seems like you haven't seen my games against Boris. I was almost lost in all of them." It was kind of funny moment.
Yeah, that's precisely what I said. So that was so far the toughest match for Jan Nepomniachtchi, because it was really hard to explain drawing 10 moves with white in a classical game, and then at some point he was lost in 3 other games. He managed to win, he managed to make another draw and win 2 rapids, but yeah, he had troubles in all of them.
Yeah, exactly. So, but he has huge support here. I can say that Vladimir Potkin, his second, is coming every day. His girlfriend Snezhana is also here. You know, they're rooting for him. And I mean, I haven't seen anyone with VE. Probably he gets some support on Skype or something like this. So maybe it also helps, you know, him to be here, surrounded by people, by his closest people. So I also know that he came a few days earlier to Israel, so perhaps he also had a chance, you know, to adjust to this country, to the schedule, everything.
Right. Wanted to ask about MVL. How was the feel? I mean, because yeah, I know the interview was published on YouTube and everything, but you were around, so you got to talk to him a little. I mean, how was his feeling when he actually lost this semi-final? Because it's obviously a big blow to his, once again, to his chances, and now it all looks like he's not qualifying for a second consecutive cycle, missing it by a very, very little, right?
Yes, of course, and of course he was really sad after this game. At the same time, I really would like to praise him for being so nice and so polite person, because he gave an interview immediately after the game, and also the first thing he did, he congratulated his opponent. And even after this interview, there were many people, his fans, waiting for him downstairs, and they asked him for signatures and photos. And I must admit that he did all what they were asking him for, and he was friendly and smiling to people. It doesn't mean that he was not disappointed. He was definitely, and he knows that he lost probably his really good chance this moment, but he was really cool. I mean, he behaved really great, I would say. It was also interesting. I asked in one interview, you remember last time in the 2017 series, it was Mamedierov and Grishuk who were watching from their houses, who were following Grand Prix, thinking, rooting against their opponents, thinking if they qualify for the candidates or not. And it was a funny story, which Mamedierov said that he was hoping that Maxim Vasiligrau will not qualify at that time. And he said that it was really crazy to watch the games, the final games from his house. And he started with coffee, but finished with some other drinks. He didn't mention which ones, but we could guess. So it was kind of funny. I don't know what Maxim is doing right now. Probably he's also watching us at this moment. Okay, what to do? I mean, it's just sport and.
That's tough, but really, as our chat says as well, that MVL is always a classy gentleman in addition to being a very, very strong chess player. So now he probably, I don't know if he's watching, but maybe there is a secret hope for him that Wei somehow strikes back and, wins the tiebreak, which would be, of course, a huge blow to Jan. But now it almost feels unfair, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also asked Maxim if he is going to stay here or he will go home. Okay, it was kind of funny question. Just, we are in Jerusalem and this place, in this holy place, and I thought maybe he could have stayed and, go to church. The only thing he can do probably at this particular moment. Okay, it's a joke, but of course, what else you can do in this situation? Now everything depends on his opponent, Jan Nepomniachtchi.
Right, and I don't know, but I really want to ask this. I mean, so what's your opinion, or maybe the opinion of maybe the players were discussing, and you've heard it about this, the wild card as the criteria. I'm not saying so now it does look. I mean, a lot of people in the chat say it's unfair. The wild card should be given to MVL and this and that. I'm not sure about that. What it looks like to me is doesn't matter who's getting the wild card, someone's going to be unhappy. So why don't we get rid of the wild card and just like give this qualification place to third place in the Grand Prix, third place in the World Cup, whatever. Just try to make it all decided on the board, right?
Yes, I mean, I partly agree with you, and it has been discussed a long time, and I've been following all these discussions in internet, and I mean, it's hard to say. Now that Jan is playing and he might win this match, it seems like unfair maybe for some people that Alexeyenko will qualify. But in fact, if he would lose this match or previous match, he would have another chance now to play the match against Alexeyenko for the wild card, and maybe he would qualify for the candidates, and his fans would be happy again to see him. So it's really it's a strange situation. I don't know. It should be discussed in a different level, and everybody has different opinion. Yeah, I think it's I don't know at the end of the day the procedure to make the final decision. But okay, so far that's the way it was decided, I guess.
Right. I don't necessarily agree that it will be unfair now to give the wild card to the Alexeyenko, because the young lad had also a fantastic year, fantastic season. But yes, if we look at MVL's results combined, plus the rating position that he's, by the average rating, he's certainly in the top 10, right? And compare it to, well, it's hard to say.
It's hard to say. He had also his chances here, you know. So it's like he also lost some chances. He could have maybe not played in Grand Prix, Grand Chess Tour, which is of course not easy to do, you know, when you can play there. And I mean, there were so many different factors. And MVL himself, of course, pointed out that the schedule was really crazy, and he took his challenge, and it was really difficult for him. But he just decided it to be the way it was. He decided to play everywhere, and maybe he will do some other, you know, decisions next time. We will see. So so many things happened. Yes.
Yeah. If anything, we can question the other criteria, which is rating, because it's like to get the wild card, you need to perform at some of the events, right? And qualified by rating, I understand it's a kind of the average rating by 12 months, but still you can just sit and wait, and all of a sudden you are getting qualified because some other guy who is higher rated than yourself has qualified from the other event. So if anything is kind of sounds unfair, this might be the rating spot.
I don't think Anish Giri agrees with you, but definitely something to speak about. In his last interview after he lost his match, he said that, yeah, okay, I understand. I showed the worst performance from the others, losing all matches in the first round. And yes, it feels unpleasant, but at least I know that I will be playing in the candidates that I qualified by rating. So, okay. There are some issues, you know, with the candidates. At the same time, if Alexeyenko will be there, I mean, he got his really good chance, you know. It's like something which many people here are fighting for years to get to the candidates. He managed to do it so quickly, and who knows, you know, maybe he will show really great result, or that's something to follow, you know, to see what will happen.
Right. Shall we actually try to look what's happening on the board? Because, yeah, I've looked. Do you see the position? Because I don't know how the tech works.
Yes.
Yeah, you see the position.
I see the position.
So something like that looked like, yes, we don't know what the evaluation is and suspect that its computer says it's much better for white, but at least black is getting some chances, right? After g3,
That's
bishop
true.
h6. Rook to g1, rook to g8, king h1, bishop c8, and Jan actually is taking the horse. So gf4, gf4, bishop f2 played. What's all about?
Now it's getting really wild. It's getting wild.
It kind of does, but at the same time, what's Black's realistic? Yeah, what's Black's realistic compensation for the piece he's got sacrificed? It's kind of his pieces are not fast enough, it seems.
Yeah, unless there is time.
Unless there is some crazy, like, take on d5, go queen g5, but I don't believe, really. Yeah, seems like white is comfortably better. Or, well, maybe there is no such thing as better. It's either white is winning or black has the attack, right? Otherwise, it's extra
Maybe
piece
he
for
can
nothing.
take on f5. Maybe he can take on f5 and then take on...
Yeah,
yeah, okay, but
all
no
seems
time.
too
He has
slow,
to take on
right?
d5. Yes.
All
And
seems
now
too
move his knight
slow.
on...
Queen g5 something, yeah. And then at the very least, white has knight g3. And when you take, if you take, the queens are traded, and that will be it. Yeah, I'm afraid it might be one of those games where black will desperately try and then offer a draw because otherwise he's losing. It could be this. We've seen this, right? But Maxime in a way did the same, right? Maxime in a way did the same.
Like this it happened.
He got an interesting position and at some point had an advantage. Then he probably misplayed it. And the moment Maxime Vachier-Lagrave offered the draw to Jan Nepomniachtchi, he was really much better for black already.
Yes, and even, I don't know, if bishop f5, it takes f5, knight d5, even queen can take on d5. I'm not sure what happens with this rook on a8.
Yeah, so probably
now we
knight
cannot
d5.
even maybe move. Yes.
Probably knight d5 is not the idea. And then we don't want to take on f5 because the knight will come to e4 as well.
To e4.
And this is probably too slow, like going to d7 in order to take, right? White at the very least has queen d3. And the knight is protecting the queen, rook goes to g1. Yeah, I don't see it happening, to be honest. I don't see it happening. Well, maybe he will show us, but...
What he had in his mind, yes, when he went for this line. At the same time, at the moment, it's hard to understand. I don't know, this knight g4 sometimes, but okay,
knight
h4
takes
is...
e4 is what our chat says. Knight takes e4 is the possibility. Okay. Not easy to understand what's going on, so perhaps we... Yes. So if the bishop takes, it's bishop h3. This I'm kind of getting. Yeah, bishop gets to g2, and as well, black might even play it slow by going f5 later. This is looking promising, at least. Okay, you sacrifice two knights just to have a promising position. In a game like this, you are happy even with that. Yeah, but what happens if white takes with the pawn? Then queen g5. Right? Threatening, yeah, a little checkmate in one. Yeah, a little checkmate in one.
Bishop g1, I thought.
But then bishop g1, queen g1.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, there is a problem. So this bishop has no square to go. I suspect what you do is you actually kind of forced to sacrifice it. Maybe on b6. Because there is one more problem. At first I thought bishop g3. Right? Point being, if you take, the queens are traded, black is happy. So white is happy, obviously, yeah, to trade the queens. But what black can do is this, in this case, it seems, is to play h4 and insist on taking this bishop with the h-pawn. The bishop still cannot... Ah, no, wait a second, there is bishop h2. No, I'm being silly. Bishop h2 is here. And then the game ends. Because, yeah, white has all the extra pieces. And no attack for black.
It's lost? Are you sure it's lost if we take on...
this one? Or maybe not,
Or we take first on f5? Can we take first on f5 also here?
Yeah, we can, yeah. Take on g3.
No, take with queen on f5.
Ah.
Yes.
So
and h3 maybe is...
Two pieces down, but continue the attack. Yeah, take on h3. So this is a threat. Well, actually, this might be something. I wouldn't be surprised, like in a blitz game, if it would actually work. I suspect it's not correct, but it might be the way to go. Queen f2, and then who knows, maybe just castle long and play till the very end.
Play slowly.
Yeah.
This position. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe, but looks like for the moment pieces of white are a bit passive, so maybe they have some chances. Yes, 94 looks interesting.
Yeah, that's what people say in the chat as well, equipped with the powerful engines, that if 94 is not played, it's basically a GG, good game for Nepomniachtchi, he wins. But after 94, things actually do get complicated. So I'm really
So it's really a
thrilled to see.
critical moment.
Yeah, I'm
And
really
so
thrilled to see what's happening.
Last time AOL didn't find, let's say, the way in this critical moment. Let's see if Wei will manage to do so and how much time he will spend. You know, yesterday was like surprising, this moment when he spent 50 minutes. I hope here he will take care more about his timing. I mean, if he wants to try to do something, this is what I mean. 94, wow, what a
Yeah,
game
that's very
it
interesting.
can be.
And look, an interesting observation from people in the chat once again. They say Jan knows that the position is wild because he's somewhere around the board. He was staring at the board. Because typically, you know Jan, I mean, when the position is good, he plays moves quickly and he leaves and he likes to walk around a lot. But now that he's around the board, I mean, he's constantly watching. That means he is worried about the position. Never mind, he is a piece up. Yeah, so the line people provide us was, once again, knight to e4, swap on f5 immediately. Actually, they say that that's what you have to do. And then you go queen g5. Probably leads to the position we've discussed, right?
Yes, so now what to play, yes.
Yeah, bishop g3, queen takes f5, yeah. There is knight,
yes.
there is also
G3.
knight g3. But then, you know what, then my idea
Maybe
works
it's enough
perhaps.
compensation.
h4, this knight to e4, queen goes to g7. And the knight from g3 cannot move. The knight from g3 cannot move. If black takes on g3, I believe that's promising. Yeah, you have f6, queen g6.
Queen g6, yes.
And hg3 is a huge threat.
Wow, what a position.
Interesting.
Actually, this is the game you can only dream of for the final, for the second game in the final. The development of this game is really great. I think it's one of the most exciting games played here so far. I don't know if you agree with me. Which games from this tournament did you like?
The games from this tournament, it was, let me guess, Gelfand against Nepo. It was a very well played game till the moment where Boris missed a direct win. Then the fantastic draw between Wei and Karyakin, the one with knight h6 sacrifice, because they both played at a very high level. I mean, there have been mistakes, but still, they were very resourceful. They were finding, like, well, Wei was finding all the attacking resources, and Karyakin, as we expect from him, was fighting all the defensive things. And then the victory, of course, the victory of Jan Nepomniachtchi against MVL. That was, I mean, under the circumstances, the game was so important, and then they both played the Grunfeld, so to find some particular position where MVL will enter at the same time will not know what to do here. It was, so I'd say the second's work has to be praised at first place in the semi-final, right? So kudos to Vladimir Potkin, perhaps, or whoever came up with this idea of surprising MVL in this particular line. So I think those two will be my picks for kind of game of the event.
By the way, you said about the game between Wei and Karyakin, and were you surprised that actually it was not home preparation of Karyakin? You know, many people were thinking that he's playing, you know, some line 97. It was all analyzed, but he said in his interview that actually he was not playing with a preparation. He just thought that 97 is a logical move and simply missed this knight h6 idea. And he had to find everything on the board.
That's very interesting because there's been a game, I believe, all the way up to knight g4. There've been a game. I mean, with if I'm not mistaken, like Hikaru Nakamura involved for one of the sides. There was a game in Rapid Grandchester or somewhere. So I thought it was actually studied. I had no idea. Then it makes it even cooler that he found all the computer defensive moves over the board. So
yes, he said that he saw this knight h6, but he kind of missed this idea that he thought that after knight f3, I guess that he's winning. That's what he thought, and he just missed this idea with knight g4. in the end.
Yeah.
So he said that while he played this knight d7, his opponent was thinking he, was not really happy at this moment. He had to find all these defensive moves like bishop e5 later. So it was interesting. It was a cool moment in the interview because I was also expecting him to know, maybe 20 moves ahead, but
Yeah.
it happens.
And
94. Yes.
94 is on the
no.
board. 94 is on the
Wow.
board, and people in the chat asking funny questions about MVL. He has lost a lot of games in the Grunfeld. Why did he decide to go for a Grunfeld in an important game? And the answer is because he doesn't know anything else. Right? He's a special player.
Yes, we've been discussing it. Yes. We've been also discussing it here, but probably he doesn't have time, to prepare another opening. That's what we thought. Playing so many tournaments in a row, it doesn't really help, to learn anything else.
So 94, fe4 played, and I believe queen g5 immediately, which I'm not sure if it does make any difference. So queen to g5 immediately. Yeah, there was something with bishop f5, ef5, queen g5 that chat was recommending. Now queen g5, but probably there's no difference because white can't really. I mean, the threat is mate in one, right? Checkmate in one, queen g2. So white can't really prevent.
Bishop
black
g4,
from...
I think, is not an option, right?
Bishop g4, it's only one piece. Look, it's only one piece, and then this is looks like winning for black, a devastating attack, and
no difference probably.
No difference. And what was we were doing here? Bishop g3 or bishop g3?
Bishop g3.
Bishop f5, ef5, and then just queen f5, right? That was the line.
Knight g3, have we checked? Knight g3 instead of bishop g3?
Yeah, we've checked if black would have taken on f5 previously, but I don't think it makes the difference, right? So knight f5, so knight g3, bishop f5, you still can't capture on f5 with the knight. And if you take like this, the guess was that black can play h4.
Wow, I don't know what is the evaluation of the computer at this moment, but it's like interesting, really interesting moment. I mean, who is fighting
I suspect
for?
white is winning. That's what people were talking about on the chat. And after queen g5, my bishop takes b6 move actually seems to be legit. I don't know what's the reason for that, but that's what I was told. Well, perhaps the point being that after bishop f5, white can try to find something more useful than ef5, as strange as it sounds, because knight h2 looks very attractive. You have a threat of rook g1. Especially if black moves the bishop. So, okay, for instance, you keep the bishop, white goes rook g1, or maybe even captures the pawn on c7. With knight on h2, rook on g1, there will be no threats to white king. So maybe it's a little bit imprecise from way to go queen g5 immediately and not to swap.
First, the bishop on f5, yes, okay. It's always difficult to find this difference when you have these two moves which seems to go to the same position. You will always choose the wrong one, I guess. It's like every player always complains which rook you have to put on d1, rook a d1 or rook e d1. So the same situation, like you believe there are two moves, queen g5, bishop f5, you think they're maybe the same. What is the difference? Always it's a problem. So I'm sure that everybody had this problem in many games.
Yeah, and Jan, interestingly, he proved me wrong on so many occasions, because when we're watching the games, I'm trying to, to commentate it from the human standpoint, and then I have a chat to back me up with all the computer analysis. And whenever it's like crazy position on the board, and chat says, okay, this move is good. And I'm saying, yeah, but it will never be played because it's a computer move, it's a human move. And then few minutes later, Jan would play this move. So now, bishop b6, I would not say it's a typical computer move. It's actually a human human solution. And maybe the positioning is complex, but I believe Jan will find it. I believe white...
Maybe he has no other choice, you know. The question is that when you are trying to find the move to play, and if you have no other choices, you will just make it because it's the only move. That's why I believe it's human move at this moment. Maybe it's the only one.
Ah, yeah, interesting. So once again, but
Oh, you said that, let's say, Jan plays a little bit like a computer. I think also there was a discussion if humans now play similar to computers, being so close to them for so long, you know, analyzing so many games with computers. Maybe it's somehow changed the approach of finding moves, or what do you think about it? Is it, do you share the same idea?
Yeah, we could say so, because one thing that computer teached us for sure is like there is no such evaluation as unclear position. There is no such thing as the dangerous position. It either works or not. And a lot of opening lines even, like you turn to analyze till the end, while before that you would think, oh no, this is scary and probably I'll get checkmated, right? And you'll just stop. But now with the computer you go on and you are able to exactly find out if it works for you or not.
Yeah, maybe also with the computers, people started to kind of check some strange moves, maybe the ones they would never check before, in a way. Like sometimes it doesn't even cross your mind, but you started to think of some completely crazy moves just because you think maybe computer would just suggest it. I mean, I think it happened a few times before that players noticed it. They started to play a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting moment.
So after Queen G5, it turns out that, yeah, well, we have a trustworthy person in the chat who actually says that Queen G5 is a legit move. And according to his engine, it's actually the best move in the position, which position is still better for white, but it is complicated enough. It is complicated enough, so there is a possibility for Jan Nepomniachtchi to go wrong. And I don't know what
now Jan is lying.
What this posture is supposed to represent. Yeah.
Maybe he's calculating in his mind. I mean, I know that Peter Swidler, he likes to look at, let's say,
at the ceiling. Yeah, Peter is looking at the ceiling. Yeah.
Yes, but Jan normally he just likes to lie down and in this kind of position, and he has been asked if he has ever slept game before.
You know, people in the chat were asking me to analyze the knight e3 move, and I was about to start it, but it's already played. So you have the answer. That's a good move. If Grandmaster plays it, it's a good move. But seriously, what's happening after knight e3? The point being, as far as I can understand, that after bishop f5, white goes rook g1. And I don't see how it works
the idea
for black.
You proposed.
Yeah, I think that's like, that's supposed to be almost winning for white, no?
Interesting. We have to calculate till the end what to do.
And that's I'm lazy to do that, to be honest. I mean, that's why I'm not playing chess and commentating, because I'm not capable of calculating lines anymore. Yeah, but seriously,
Bishop
this
G4,
doesn't.
I don't know.
Yeah, Bishop G4, and I was thinking Knight G4. Just for the fact that if you take the knight, Rook G4, and the Rook on G8 is hanging with a check. I don't see how it. Unless there is
Can we Queen H5? Yes.
Yeah, like some craziness is still going on. Like you go to D7, and then if white captures the rook, he's actually getting in trouble after this. Okay, if this works, then I don't know. I mean, that's absolutely crazy.
Queen H6 is not working. Queen G2. Wow.
Yeah, Queen G2 checkmate, and the queen is hanging. Let's see. Fe3 was the answer. Well, actually, moves are coming up quickly. Knight e3, fe3, bishop e3, and queen g3 played.
Wow.
So still creating some... well, Jan captures on h6. Does it mean it's going to be some sort of a perpetual? Hang on a second. Queen f3 check, played. king h2. They play so fast, and I believe the game is about to end. Point being, bishop f5
Yes.
loses to rook e3. And that's the end of it. That's a draw, and that means Jan Nepomniachtchi wins the Jerusalem final. Jan Nepomniachtchi wins the Jerusalem Grand Prix, and he is qualifying to the candidates.
Wow,
yeah.
I'm really surprised.
Yeah, I believe that's the moment I have to let you go because, well, you have to,
I have to do
make interviews with
yes.
the players, right? So thanks for joining,
But,
and it was a very short day, but yeah, congratulations to Jan Nepomniachtchi for winning it.
yeah, thank you, Zhenya. It was nice to be with you at this really interesting moment. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so someone unexpected, what would seem a very, very exciting game petered out to a draw in just 1.5 hours. So 93 was good enough of a move, it turns out. Under the circumstances, there's probably no way to avoid the repetition for Jan Nepomniachtchi, but he didn't want to. He wanted a draw. So that's... Once again, congrats to Jan Nepomniachtchi. Well, obviously, MVL is not happy with this result, but he had his chance in the semi-finals. Not much to say. And yeah, in a way, he doesn't seem to be all that upset with how it finished. He attempted to mess it up, to create a fighting position on the board, but yeah, Jan was... precise enough not to let anything crazy happen. So once again, congrats to Jan Nepomniachtchi. So it was unexpectedly quick day, and that's basically the last day of FIDE World Chess Grand Prix Series 2019. And as a caster of all 4 events. I was not expecting to, well, actually you guys might think that I'm kind of usurpated the commentary booth here, but it's actually the caster is selected for each individual tournament, and it was a bit of a surprise at the end of the day too. So it's only now I come to realization that I've casted all 4 Grand Prix tournaments. Yeah, it was a pleasure working for you. It was very nice to have you helping me out in the chat. Yeah, the result of a second game we already know. So questions are still coming. What's my next tournament? It's going to be in the few days, guys. It'll be World Rapid and Blitz. I don't have to travel anywhere. That's going to be in Moscow starting 26 December, so that's not that many of 3 days, guys. Yeah, so once again, the final result, 1.5 for Jan Nepomniachtchi. He wins Grand Prix Jerusalem, and he almost catches up with Krysiuk. I believe, if I counted everything correctly, it's Krysiuk on 20 Grand Prix points, winning the entire Grand Prix series. And then Jan Nepomniachtchi on 19, so just 1 point back, but it does not matter for Jan, I believe, because after a disastrous display in Hamburg, the second tournament for him, 3rd leg of a Grand Prix overall, his qualification to the candidates was really, really questionable. But then, really brilliant display over here in Jerusalem. He wins the entire event, and he did it. Right, and that will be, as I said, everyone has to have rest at times. They've been really packed with event schedule this year for the players as well for the casters. And so you can imagine, and with next event coming in a few days, I actually don't mind this being the last game, even though the tiebreak would have been exciting to watch, but I don't mind this being the last day. So once again, thanks those companies who supported Grand Prix Series 2019, for Sagro, Algorand, Kaspersky, and Tech, the partner of event in Jerusalem. So once again, thanks to those guys. Thanks Thank you guys in the YouTube chat who are supporting me, made me laugh at times, made me blush a couple of times, I believe. And see you next time, which is a few days from now.